I know you're
Wonderful.
very excited about our guest today.
Absolutely. I have the pleasure of introducing to you guys today Izzy Peluche. He is a longtime financial advisor helping families and entrepreneurs put their financial worlds together. But he's come out now with an amazing new platform to actually help turn some of those policies that you get as you approach that retirement age into real hard cash, especially for some of those people who maybe skipped out on the retirement fund saving part, right? Uh, but yeah, thank you so much for coming on, Izzy. It's so great to have you on.
Oh, pleasure is mine. Thank you.
Absolutely. So, here at the Survive Podcast, we love hearing stories, right? And really just want to start off with the basics. How did you get started with your brand? And tell us a little bit what is your brand?
Sure, sure. So my company's name is RIJ. It was three partners, including myself. And this whole thing kind of kicked off with the idea that was asked of me by a coworker about 5 years ago. He showed up with a stack of life insurance policies about 6 inches thick, all his friends, families, and business owners. And he asked me a simple question. He asked, what are his options with these? Unfortunately, at the time, life settlements weren't really regulated. They weren't compliant. There was really nowhere to take them. The only option, obviously, is you keep it or get rid of them. They all disappeared. There's about $4 million worth of death benefits just gone within like 30 to 45 days. So I kept searching for an option or an answer to help them out with that. And
Mhm.
there wasn't anything at the time, but that sort of nagged at me for a while until I got connected with some specialty brokers in different parts of the country and investor groups that now are part of my team. And they all are looking for opportunities to buy existing life insurance as an investment for their portfolio. So it has become a fully regulated, compliant, licensed, required type transaction. And it's a win-win-win scenario. So at the end of the day, it's all about making sure everybody, walks away happy. Client walks out with a check. We walk out with future payments. Obviously, I'm helping out, so it's always a good thing when it's a three-way win. So,
Absolutely. And that's the key thing is that education, isn't it, Israel? I mean, if you don't aren't able to educate your clients, and that's where you look at the solution in so many ways, right?
yeah, and actually, what we find is that most people don't know that this even exists, let alone their advisors. I have talked to quite a few advisors back in the past, and their back office had told them not to do it because at the time it wasn't regulated. A lot of them don't know it exists or where to approach it, but it has become another option, similar to reverse mortgages and some other vehicles out there that are kind of in that creative mindset. But what I find is that, when I approach people with this idea, it takes me about four or five ways to communicate this before I see the aha moment in their face. And then, they're like, well, how much can I get? That's not a straight answer, but it all depends on a lot of moving parts. But yeah, education is key. I do a lot of networking, a lot of local seminars. I, deal with a lot of insurance guys that obviously don't even sell life insurance, let alone resell life insurance. So it's an interesting market, and I think the growth potential here has just started to climb.
Absolutely. Yeah, it's very interesting to also see how, this also played out even in my own personal life. I've been around um, milders and understand how they've struggled with maybe a policy that they just don't know what to do with anymore, right? And finding that avenue to either like you said, get some type of settlement from that, or find a way to reform it into a newer policy that better fits what your needs are. Um, that that's something that a lot of people seem to be missing, especially now that we are in this sort of uh, unpredictable economic environment. And the big question right now is what is going on with my retirement fund, right? And it seems like RIJ right now is positioned to really help provide some of that immediate infusion for some of those folks who um, may be going through some of those tranches, right?
So, yeah, basically, life insurance is an asset class, and most people don't know that. They just think it's a payment that has to be made, and then maybe one day it might pay off, maybe not. But it's an asset class that has ownership, and those owners can be changed.
Hmm.
And I've seen a lot of people where, the numbers just don't make sense. They can't afford it down the road when it becomes more expensive. They just kind of gave up on the idea. They're tired of making those payments for the last 15, 20, 25 years. So the conversation has to go around, where's our timeline? And what we do is we do a lot of the homework in-house. So we do look at medical backgrounds, trying to figure out a timeline there, do the medical, the financial review to see what our costs would be. And we reverse engineer the math. And so ultimately we know there's, several different directions that can go in, but we want to make sure that ultimately, the payoff is there for us, and that's how we recover all of our expenses and make a profit. So,
Wow,
uh,
amazing.
so
So, how you lovely painting a great picture of the brand and what you've been building. What if what's sort of what you current goals and things that you've been doing recently that get you really excited about the direction of the business?
so what I'm finding right now is that there are a lot of opportunities. I mean, there are literally hundreds of millions of dollars worth of death benefit just kind of going by the wayside.
Mm,
And
Wow. Mhm.
those are opportunities that can absolutely be leveraged and created cash infusions for my clients. But I'm watching scenarios where even today, I got a husband and wife. She's not well. She's only 62, and he's got two life insurance policies from their employer, and he can only afford to upgrade one of them. And so we've started talking about the other one, and he's going to end up with a pretty sizable check. That way he can spend more time with her, make sure she's okay, and then they're not going to worry about all their other finances at the moment. So they're just stories like that all the time. I mean, I had a lady who owned a business. The bank made her grab a policy as collateral against her business loan because they certainly don't want the facility that she was putting together. They want to just get repaid back. And so
right.
made her buy a policy which she never wanted. And when she sold the business, she ended up with the policy in her hand, and that policy literally had no value for her to begin with. So she kind of came to me, and we found her a new home for that policy. So uh, the investor on that group was absolutely elated at the fact that he got another $1 million policy for a very reasonable rate, and she ended up traveling to Europe, seeing her family, and put a new roof on her house. So,
Oh,
Yeah.
wow. Now, so let's talk about candidates for like candidates. What should you be looking for? Like, if you're listening to this broadcast and say, I want to resell this, what should your potential clients look for?
sure. So there's very simple criteria that we do look for. So ideally, you want them 60 and over. 62 would be better. Anyone that's up at that age or higher. We also look for policies that have been in force for a minimum of 2 to 3 years. Closer to 5 would be better. It all depends on what state they're from. So
Right.
you cannot buy a policy for the purpose of resale. That is non-compliant. That's illegal. But if they bought it for their families and they, needed it for business, whatever. So the policy has to be at least 2 to 3 years old at a minimum. The last piece we look for are, plan designs. So on our end, that's just something we do our homework with. But 62 and older, ideally 100,000 or bigger. That seems to be very little these days. 100,000 is kind of our minimum. And at the same time, they have to have medical issues, but not necessarily. It all depends on what the rest of the story looks like. Um, so those are basically the three criteria: 62 and older, 100,000 or bigger, and then obviously if there's any medical issues or the just no need for the policy anymore.
Okay, so when very, very interesting. And that policy is what types of life insurance do you look at? Types of plans.
So we actually look at every brand name. So it's kind of doesn't matter what the carrier is, but as far as the style, We do look at term insurance, which most people are surprised by it.
Really, that is really surprising me. Okay.
Yeah.
So I was trained to be a life insurance salesman,
Okay.
sales, and I did all that stuff during a time in my life. So I remember, those particulars. And now you're hitting me a term like, wow, okay, I did
Well,
term and I wish I never did term. I wish I would have done cash value life insurance from the beginning.
so
But go ahead.
here's the only caveat. So term insurance has to have conversion privileges that are still
There
active.
you go.
So conversion means we need to upgrade them to a permanent plan. So we want to lock in our actual annual rates so we know what our investors will be paying every year. So it's got to be convertible term with the option still available. So yeah, that's a big one. We get a lot of term conversions that come in our door. And that's really where a lot of people buy term because it's cheaper, lower
Right.
cost, and they ultimately do have value there in that death benefit proceeds. So we also look for what we call collapsing ULs or underfunded ULs. So basically, somebody's bought a permanent plan but paid minimums. Those policies have a shorter timeline left if you stay on that schedule. And at the end of the day, we look for those opportunities to make sure that we fund it correctly and get it back on track to buy us more time. Everything for us is about life expectancies. It's about getting to the end goal, which is obviously years down the road. But so collapsing ULs, underfunded ULs, same idea. Convertible term, whole life for the most part do not work for us. Now, I don't want you to necessarily use that as 100% because I have just closed a deal on a whole life, but it was a very newer transition from term. So it was in its first year, had very little cash value. And so the reality for a whole life policy is we have to give the client more than what's in their account, obviously. And so a lot of those that have
Right.
aged and have overfunded, those don't work out with our numbers. So I would say any plan design, just let us look at it. Our favorite is convertible term, followed by underfunded ULs, and then occasionally the random whole life plan.
Wow. Okay. I mean, it's intriguing. That's why you got to give him a call. But good, Christopher, your another question you have. This is just
Yeah. I
intriguing
mean,
stuff because I have a client that is basically cash value life insurance, but he does a lot of other stuff for helping in the tax side too. But what I've learned today is something that really is going to be are you a candidate? And that's setting up a call. But go ahead, Christopher, your question.
yeah, I mean, yeah, as you mentioned earlier, right, is this has now been it's now a regulated space. This is now compliant, something that people are starting to get aware of. Who are some of those bigger players in the space that you're differentiating yourself from, and how are you doing that differentiation?
Yeah, so there are basically about four really large players. One of them has actually just become listed on the Nasdaq, but they do about 100 million a month in transactions. So they are
Wow.
pretty large players. They tackle about 40 to 45% of the market itself. So what I'm looking to do is looking to be more of a boutique. I'm a little bit closer to home. I am more than happy to meet with every one of my clients because I do want that personal touch. I've been a member of the insurance world for over 30 years. So that is how I stay in business. It's all about relationships.
Absolutely.
So I will honestly tell my clients if that policy is worth keeping and it's at the phase where maybe there's a reason to hold on to it. I actually tell them to do that. If they need the money, that's different. But I give honest advice. My advice is free based on actual reviews. And I want to be a local boutique type company. I don't want to have 45 full-time employees just collecting medical data. That seems a little excessive. so,
Got it.
Absolutely. Well,
so
that's an incredible differentiator, and I think that's more reason why people should reach out to you
mhm.
because you're going to give them a tailored, personalized action plan for how to get this done, and your personable guy too on top of this. So,
Thank you.
uh, Neil, did you have a question?
No, I didn't. Basically, Christopher, kind of sum up Israel for you, us. Yeah.
Yeah, absolutely. So you know, uh, we're I've also been in insurance and financial advising game, right? And I understood a lot of what we talked about today. But what are some key takeaways that you would leave our audience here today For someone who maybe is maybe a little younger like I am, still trying to plot out their future and is an entrepreneur, how, you know, making sure that I make the right decisions today as it relates to these financial planning tools, as it relates to life insurance and retirement, how this might play into my future and potentially using your services one day.
So sure. Actually, this it's twofold. So the first part is I have had some younger investors come up to me and ask me if they are able to buy a policy. So think about that from their perspective. They're in their 30s
Mhm.
looking to buy a policy from somebody on their 60s to make, a quick 500,000 or 1 million. Those are your future life-changing events. So that's one scenario for sure.
Very interesting.
The other option is if you buy a policy on yourself and maybe we can't buy it for that purpose, but you can certainly
Right.
buy it for a need that you need today. But think of those policies as a future asset. It may be something that you can definitely take to the market. I've had somebody ask me at that point directly, said, "Can I buy a policy now and sell it to you in 2 years?" And I said, "Well, you can, but I don't know what it'll be worth." And it's certainly just a combination of a lot of moving parts. So, yeah, from a strategic standpoint, there's a market for it. What does that market yield and how those players are, if that's intentional, that's hard to say. So, but yeah, if you need the policy, I would hold on to it. Take a look at the options before you let anything just go away
Yeah.
for nothing. So,
And that's such a huge takeaway because as someone who may not necessarily need all my policies today, I may be healthy, may feel like in a healthy state. Um, it's the understanding that there is an additional route should I, even in my youth, not want that policy.
so
Uh,
the other thought too is that, obviously this is the youngest will be ever, right? So tomorrow's
right.
another age. But at the end of the day, you are your healthiest as you are now. And so if you lock in a health rate and an age and a cycle for a policy plan, options are available. And who knows, in addition to what we're doing, what might be available in, 10, 15 years. So
Amazing.
yeah, it's a combination of all those different pieces. And we do have policies that are available, obviously, for the younger investors, as well as possibly, building your own portfolio for down the road.
Wow, this is
Uh,
great. Go ahead.
Perfect. So, best place again, Israel. Where can we go?
So if you look at my website, rijlife.com, there's a contact us form in there. That certainly would be a good place to start. And I would personally call and have conversations with anybody that has any questions about anything.
Excellent. I think it's so important to have those conversations and plan for the future. And Israel, there's just many people you can help. We appreciate you coming on. And Christopher, best place we can go is uxbright.com for you, right?
Yeah, uxbright.com. And you can follow us on at Savant on LinkedIn.
All right.
So
Appreciate it. Thanks, Israel.
Thanks.
Thank you,
Pleasure.
Christopher.